So Google I/O 2019 has come and gone, and there was a ton of stuff that was announced that was really cool, both in the keynote with general Google products and in some of the side sessions with Chrome OS and Chromebooks. And we want to talk about all of those things and kind of recap all of it for you so that if you didn't sit and watch all of those sessions like we did, you can kind of still know what's going on in both the Google and Chrome OS universe. So let's go. But before we get into any of that Google I/O goodness, this video is brought to you by NordVPN. They are the VPN of choice for lots and lots of users, and there's a reason. They work on all sorts of devices, whether it be Chromebooks or something like the brand new Pixel 3a or 3a XL. All you have to do is go over to chromeunbox.com/NordVPN. You can learn more and get started today. So first up, stuff from the keynote, and there are a ton of announcements, there are a ton of things shown off. We want to kind of give you a high level look at some of the ones that we felt like were pretty important, and there was probably none more important in that keynote than the Pixel 3a and 3a XL. These are Google's new affordable, I don't want to say mid-range, they almost feel like cheap phones at this point, right? Because mid-range phones are $750 now. So, you got Samsung and Apple making $750 mid-range phones. Well, Google's coming along and making a $400 mid-range cheap phone that has a camera that's as good as the Pixel 3 XL. It has a screen that's right on par with those from a color and saturation. It's an OLED. It's built well. It looks really good. It brings back the headphone jack. It does so many great things for $400. And it's $400, and there's not a lot of smartphones you can get for that price, and there are none on the market that you can get that have the best camera on the market because it's just as good as the 3 and 3 XL. So I think Google's done a cool thing with this phone, or with these phones, and bringing really, really awesome hardware down to a really, really manageable point. And from the reviews that have come out already, people really, really love this phone, and so we went and got one, and we're going to try it out, and we'll be doing some videos around it too. The second big announcement was hardware as well, and it is the Nest Hub Max, and I trip up on it quite a bit as we're filming this even because Google has now changed the name of Google Home Hub to Nest Hub. So the little one, the 7-inch one, is Nest Hub now, and now you have Nest Hub Max, 10-inch screen, camera included, $229. So Nest Hub Max, Nest Hub. And it adds a couple cool features. You have facial recognition, so it knows who it's talking to whenever you walk up to it. You don't have to talk to it in order for it to understand it needs to deliver up your personal stuff. It has gesture recognition, so from across the room, if the speakers are going and it can't hear you, instead of yelling across the room at Google, you can just raise your hand and the music will die down. You can also use the camera as a Nest camera, so if you have the Nest app and you have other cameras hooked up, it can be one of those for you to look in and see what's going on in your house while you're away. So pretty cool, and I think it's a great price, honestly, for a device that does all of this and gives you a screen that large. Next up is probably my favorite part of the entire keynote, and it's what Google is calling kind of internally the next gen assistant. And so what this amounts to is Google has figured out some way through some sort of witchcraft or magic to get this massive file that is required for your vocal model in the cloud, for you to talk to Google Assistant and it to understand and go back and forth with you. It's 100 gigs in the cloud. Somehow they've condensed it down to half a gig, so about 500 megabytes. It'll fit right on your phone. And they got up on stage and showed this thing working, and it was just firing through commands because the voice model is literally on your phone now. And they were just going through one thing after another. Book this, say this, do this, send a message to so-and-so, pull up my Google Photos, get the ones of the giraffes, send it over to so-and-so. It was mind-blowing, and you need to go watch it if you haven't seen it yet. Go look at it about 30 minutes into the presentation. You'll see it. It is absolutely staggering watching this at work, and I think it's going to fundamentally change the way that we actually speak to and interact with our devices. And that means Chromebooks eventually too. This isn't even a thing yet, but they said it will be first on Pixel 4, and then I'm sure it will roll out to other devices later, and it makes interacting with the Google Assistant something far beyond what it is currently, and I'm super excited to see this actually hit later this year and early into next year. Kind of related to the Google Assistant, next gen Google Assistant is the next version of Google Duplex, and if you remember from last year, that was kind of the mind-blowing part of the keynote last year. They got Google Assistant to call up and like make some appointments, and everybody freaked out about whether that's okay or not. And Duplex has rolled out to 44 states. It's a thing, it's real, and it works. Now they're bringing it to the web and they're bringing it to your browser. So imagine autofill on steroids, and you can just say, hey, book me a car from Enterprise for my upcoming trip to Chicago. And it's going to know that you're going to Chicago. It's going to know when you booked your flight. It's going to know where you're flying into and out of. And it's going to go and just autofill all that stuff. And at the end of it, you look down and you go, yeah, that works. Hit the button, booked. It was pretty mind-blowing too. So the combination of that and this next-gen assistant, I think, are just going to take Google so much farther into the next step of what it means to have a virtual assistant. And it just seems like they're leaving Amazon and Bixby and Siri just kind of in the dust. Those feel silly almost in comparison to what Google's doing right now. Last up, we want to talk about live caption, live relay, and Project Euphonium. So those three things and a few other things also are things that Google is doing to help with accessibility and people with disabilities and people that need just something extra to get Google working for them. So let's talk through them really quickly. The captioning and relay are kind of two parts of the same thing. Live captioning basically will put words on the screen for any video, so captioning, but it'll do it for any video. It's not just YouTube, it's not just Vimeo or anything like that. Any video that's playing on your screen will be captioned, and Google's machine learning will just take care of it and do it, put the words on the screen. So it doesn't matter if you can hear it or not, you can get captions for anything on your device. Same thing kind of with relay. So live relay lets you do the same thing in phone calls. So somebody calls you, what they're saying gets transcribed, you can read it, and then you can type back, and then Google will voice that for you. So people with either auditory or speaking disabilities, doesn't matter, they can still communicate on the phone. And those are huge steps, and it's going to be really cool to see that stuff roll out. And then there's Project Euphonium, which is Google's attempt to help all these voice assistants understand people that have difficulty speaking clearly. And it doesn't really matter the reason why you may have difficulty speaking clearly. Google's working on a way to train voice models to understand you regardless and still allow you to take part in all the cool stuff that they're doing around voice models and assistants and voice text and all that kind of stuff. So it's just really cool seeing Google move forward on all these accessibility fronts and make their technology available to way more people through it. Okay, let's shift gears over to Chrome OS. And though it wasn't covered quite as much in the big shiny keynote, a lot of the side sessions talked a lot about Chromebooks and Chrome OS. And we wanted to try to find all the cool parts of that and put them together and talk to you about them real quickly here. And what stood out most to me was in one of the sessions, they were talking about trying to get developers to continue targeting Chrome OS as a place to land your app and make sure that it works on big screens and all that kind of stuff. And in a way to do that, they shared some really interesting statistics. And one of those was the growth of Chromebooks over the last year. So in 2017, you had 17% of the market of notebooks sold in the US were Chromebooks. Compare that with 2018, and the growth was up to 21%. So over 1 in 5 notebooks sold in the US in 2018, quarter 4, was a Chromebook. And that's pretty substantial. That's some huge growth in a sector where, in general, laptops are pretty flat. Chromebooks are continuing to grow. So they're trying to send out this message. Look, guys, you need to develop for Chromebooks. More people are buying them. Kids are growing up and they're growing to know Chromebooks. You need to develop for Chromebooks. You are missing the market if you're not developing with them in mind. Another cool announcement was that they made it really clear that they are working to have Android P on Chromebooks across the board. So if a Chromebook has Android, we should see all of them getting onto Android P within the next version or so of Chrome OS. And that's really cool because Android Q is going to be coming out, in the fall, and we'll have to start making that transition. So it'd be nice for everybody to be on P moving forward, because there's a lot of them still on 7.1. And so we're just going to skip over everything else and get straight to P here pretty soon, and we'll kind of all be on the same level playing field. Speaking of Android, this was obviously geared towards Android developers quite a bit. And for Android developers, there is a simple installation process now for the Android SDK and Android Studio, which is where you would build an Android app for Linux now. And used to, there was a big process you had to kind of go through to get it working and running on a Chromebook. They've made it simple. Click one button, boom, everything downloads and installs, and you're up and running with Android Studio on a Chromebook, so you can start developing apps really, really quickly on a Chromebook now. On the app front with Chrome OS, a couple things have happened. One, We're going to see instant apps from Android, which is if you go search right now on your phone, if you have an Android phone, search for Clash Royale. That's what they used in their example. And on your phone, you'll see a little thing that says try now. You click it, game opens, and you can start playing almost immediately. It's something they announced a couple years ago, and it's been around for a little bit, but it has not shown up on Chromebooks as of yet. And it's called Android Instant Apps, and it now will be on Chromebooks moving forward. It just will give us that same ability to open the Play Store and just try apps out without having to install and download and all that kind of junk. So it's a cool, neat feature that I'm looking forward to seeing. From a purely Chrome standpoint, there's a couple cool new features too. One is just a much easier way to install PWAs, and really just an easier way to know that there's one available to you. So not every website's a PWA, but PWAs in general are going to look like websites. So if you get to one and you don't know that it's a PWA or it's something you could condense and have, on your shelf and have as an application, you'll know soon. In Chrome OS 76, there's just a little thing that pops up in the top of the URL bar. It says, hey, there's a PWA here. Would you like to install it? Click it. Boom, you're installed. So no pop-ups. They can get rid of all that junk. It's this nice nudge that just lets users know, hey, there's a PWA here for you to install. And maybe my favorite thing, virtual desktops are finally just out in the open. We've written about them, we've talked about them, and we've known it's in development, but Google fully acknowledged it and showed it actually working and said it will be here in Chrome 76. So hopefully when the dev channel gets to 76, apparently in Canary on some machines, you can hit a flag and actually start using them. But regardless, in the next few weeks, we're going to start seeing it trickle down into the channels. We're going to get to actually start using this, and virtual desktops are just something I've wanted on Chrome and Chrome OS for a long, long time, and I'm excited that they're finally here. So let's wrap up. That was a lot, and honestly, it wasn't even close to as much as what we watched and what was available at I/O. If you want to check more out, go to the YouTube channel, Google Developers, and you can see all of those videos if you want to watch all of them and knock yourself out there. But if you'd like to just get a slightly deeper dive, in our podcast this week, all we talked about was I/O. We went into these topics and kind of got a little bit deeper into why some of this stuff matters and got to talk and flesh out some of it a little bit more. If you didn't know that we do a podcast, that's okay. Just go to chromeunbox.com/podcast or go to the website and click the podcast button up there at the top, and you can start listening, add us to your podcast player, and hopefully you'll listen as the weeks pour on. But guys, that's it for this one. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button down below, and until next time, we'll see you.